This is Gelila International Seminary College for the course Psychological Disorder, and we're going to see part 3 that starts with dissociative disorder. Dissociative disorder is characterized by individual becoming split off or dissociated from her core sense of self. Memory and identity become disturbed. Thus disturbance have psychological rather than physical cause. Dissociative disorder listed in DSM-5 include dissociative amnesia, depersonalization, derealization disorder, and dissociative identity disorder. The first and important one is dissociative amnesia is one category of dissociative disorder referred to partial or total forgetting of some experience or event. An individual with dissociative amnesia is unable to recall important personal information, usually following an extremely stressful or traumatic condition experience, such as combat, natural disaster, being victim of violence. Memory impairment are not caused by ordinary forgetting. Some individuals with dissociative amnesia will also experience dissociative fatigue, whereby they suddenly wander away from the home, experience confusion about their identity, sometimes even adopt new identity. Some have questioned the validity of dissociative amnesia. It has even been characterized a piece of psychotic folklore void of convincing empirical support. The second one is the depersonalization or derealization of disorder. Depersonalization or derealization disorder characterized by recurring episode of depersonalization, derealization, or both. Depersonalization defined as feeling of unreality or detachment from, or unfamiliarity with one whole self or from aspect of self. Individuals who experience depersonalization may believe their thought and feeling are not their own. They may feel robotic as thought they lack control over their movement and speech. They may experience a distorted sense of time, and extreme cases, they become sense of out-of-body experience in which they see themselves from the vantage point of another person. Derealization, on the other hand, is conceptualizing the sense of unreality or detachment from unfamiliarity with in the world, be it individual and inanimate objects or surrounding. A person who experiences derealization may feel as thought he is in fog or dream, or that the surrounding world is somehow artificial or unreal. Individuals with depersonalization derealization disorder often have difficulty in describing their symptoms, may think they are going crazy. The third important one is the dissociative identity disorder. By far, the most well-known dissociative disorder and dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder. People with dissociative identity disorder exhibit two or more separate personality or identity, each well-defined, distinct from one another. They also experience memory gap of their time during which another identity is charged. Therefore, it's the most important. In summary, the main character of dissociative disorder is that people become dissociated or distanced from their sense of self, resulting in memory and identity disturbance. Dissociative disorder listed in DSM-5, including the amnesia, depersonalization or realization, and the dissociative identity. A person with this dissociative amnesia is unable to recall important personal information, often after a stressful or traumatic experience. Depersonalization and derealization disorder characterized by recurring episode of depersonalization, detachment from or unfamiliarity with the self, or derealization, detachment from or unfamiliarity with the world. A person with dissociative identity disorder exhibits two or more well-defined and distinct personality or identity, as well as memory gap for their time during another identity was present. Dissociative identity disorder is generated controversially, made because some believe its symptom can be faked by patient if presenting its symptom somehow benefit the patient in avoiding negative consequence or taking responsibility of one action. The second most important is the personality disorder. The term personality refers to loosely to one stable, consistent, distinctive way of thinking about feeling, acting, and relating to the world. People with a personality disorder exhibit personality styles that differ markedly from expectation of their culture. Inflexibility begin in adolescence, early adulthood, and cause distress or impairment. Generally, individuals with this disorder exhibit enduring personality style that are extremely troubling and often creates problems for them and those with whom they come into contact. Their maladaptive personality style frequently brings them into conflict with others, disrupts their ability to develop and maintain social relationships, prevents them from accomplishing realistic life goals. Then this DSM-5 recognized 10 personality disorder, organized into 3 different clusters. Cluster 1 disorder include paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. People with this disorder display personality style that is odd one. The second cluster B, personality disorder, includes antisocial personality disorder, the histrionic personality disorder, the narcissistic personality disorder, and a borderline personality disorder. People with the disorder usually impulsively or overly dramatic, highly emotional, and erratic. Cluster C disorder includes avoidant personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and people with the disorder appear to become fearful. The borderline personality disorder was originally coined in the late 1930s in effort to describe patients who appeared anxious but were prone to brief psychotic experience. That is, patients who were thought to be literally on the borderline between anxiety and psychosis. Today, borderline personality disorder is completely different meaning. Borderline personality characterized chiefly by instability in interpersonal relationship, self-image, mood, as well as markedly impulsive. People who personality disorder cannot tolerate thought of being alone and will make frantic efforts and to avoid separation. Their relationships are intense and unstable. These individuals are unstable view of self. People who personality disorder may be highly impulsive, may engage in reckless, self-destructive behavior, such as excessive gambling, spending money in irresponsible way, substance abuse, engage in unsafe sex, and reckless driving. Additionally, this borderline personality disorder is comorbid with anxiety, mood, and substance use abuse. Biological base of this borderline personality disorder highly focused on genetic factor appeal to be important in development of borderline personality. For example, core personality traits that characterize this disorder, such as emotionality instability, show high degree of heritability, important. Individuals with this borderline personality disorder report experiencing childhood physical, sexual, emotional abuse at rate of greater than those observed in general population. This finding would suggest that borderline personality disorder may be determined by interaction between genetic factor and adverse environmental experience. The second one is antisocial personality disorder. According to DSM-5, individuals with antisocial personality disorder show no regard at all for other people's rights or feelings. They never give attention and focus for other people's rights and feelings. This lack of regard exhibits a number of ways and can include repeatedly performing illegal acts, lying to or conning others, carelessness, irritability, and aggressiveness toward others and failing to act responsibly way. The worst part about anti-personality disorder, however, is that people with this disorder have no remorse over one's misdeeds. These people will hurt, manipulate, exploit, abuse others, and not feel any guilty. That's typical example, typical characteristics. People with anti-personal disorder seem to view the world as self-serving or unkind. They seem to think they should use whatever means necessary to get in life. They tend to view others not as living, thinking, feeling, being, but rather prone to use to abused for a specific purpose. That is very most important issue. There are some risk factors associated with this antisocial personality disorder. This disorder observed 3.6% of the population. The disorder is much more common in male, with 3-to-1 ratio of men and to women, and more likely occur in men who are younger, widows, separated, divorced, and low socioeconomic status. Who live in urban area and who live in Western United States, for example, according to research. Compared to men with antisocial personality, women with the disorder are more likely to experience emotional neglect, sexual abuse during childhood. You can see from your manual, page 58, table 1-3. Family, twin, and adoption studies suggest that both genetic and environmental factors influence the development of anti-personality disorder, and as well general anti-behaviors, criminality, violence, and aggressiveness is important one. Interaction with genetic and adverse environmental circumstances highly contribute. Again, you can see on page 58, 59, figure 1.19, longitudinal study is basically identify risk factor for predicting violent behavior in antisocial. With those antisocial tendencies do not seem to experience emotions the way other people do. Thus, individuals fail to show fear in response to environment, cue that signal punishment, pain, and anxious stimulation. For those antisocial personality disorder, lack of skill. Conditions may indicate presence of characteristics such as emotional deficit, implicity, underlying personality and social behavior, and a negative social relationship. While emotional deficit may contribute to antisocial personality disorder is one. The investigators suggest that either activation in this region where watching social interaction involve one person harming another may reflect perceived desire to kind of the behaviors. In summary, individual with personality disorder exhibits personality style that inflexible, cause distress and impairment, creates problem with themselves and others. DSM-5 recognize 10 personality disorder, as I mentioned and discussed so far. Cluster A, Cluster B, Cluster C. We have discussed these all things. And the other one is disorder in childhood. Most of disorder we have discussed so far is typically diagnosed with adulthood. Also, they can and sometimes do occur during childhood period. However, there are groups of conditions that when present are diagnosed early in childhood, often before the time a child enters school. These conditions are listed in DSM-5 as neurodevelopmental disorder, and they involve developmental problem in personal, social, academic, and intellectual function. And this another most important area that in this section we'll discuss two disorders. One, attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder. The second one is autism. Attention deficit or hyperactivity is one most important. This is one most important, the fact that with taking of these issues, trouble or characteristic of this is basically trouble concentrating on some activity. For example, if you see children or students lack of or trouble in concentrating on homework, had a short attention span in school, had repeatedly go over easy homework to learn the material. Therefore, this hyperactivity is something lack. This is Gelila International Seminary College for Developmental Disorder course on part 3. A child with ADHD show constant pattern of inattention and hyperactive and impulsive behavior that interfere with the normal function. One basic and specific and unique characteristics of this is that inattention, lack of constant pattern of inattention, hyperactivity is key. Some of the signs of inattention include, for example, great difficulty with an accordance of tasks that require sustained attention. For example, conversation and reading. Failure to follow instruction, often resulting in failure to complete schoolwork and other duty. Disorganization, difficulty keeping things in order. Poor time management, lack of attention detail, becoming easy distracted and forgetfulness. That's important. Hyperactivity, again characterized by extensive movements, includes leaving one seat in situation where remaining seat is expected, having trouble sitting still, running about and climbing on things, blurting out response before another person question or statement being completed, difficulty waiting one's turn for something, and interrupting and intruding on others. Typical and most important. HD occurs about 5% of children. In average, boys are 3 times more likely to HD than girls. Children with HD face severe academic and social challenge. Compared to their HD counterparts, children with HD have lower grades and standardized test score and higher rate of inclusion, grade retention, and dropping out. HD is chronic problem, one that persists into adolescence and adulthood. A recent study found that 29% rate of adults who had been diagnosed with HD decade early still showed symptoms. Life problem with HD important. Compared to the control sample of 136 participants who had never been diagnosed with HD, those who were diagnosed as children, the results show that had worse educational attainment, had lower economic status, held less prestigious occupational position, were more likely to be unemployed, made considerably less in salary, scored worse on measure of occupational functioning, scored worse on measure of social functioning, were more likely to be divorced, and were more likely to be non-alcohol related substance abuse problem. Again, there are a lot of longitudinal studies show that children diagnosed with HD are at high risk for substance abuse problem. One study reported childhood ADHD predicted later thinking problem, daily smoking, use of morphine, and other illicit drug. The risk substance abuse problem appear to be even greater for those ADHD who also exhibit antisocial tendency. What the cause? There are possible causes for ADHD. Family and twin study indicate that genetic plays significant role in development of ADHD. Genetic factor. And again, there are another factor, possible factor. This study found that the median concordance related to a related adoptee, for example, stated siblings were 0.09, also number of small greater than 0, those suggesting that environment play have at least some influence in relation, in addition to the genetic factor. Indeed, medication used in treatment of AD is a lot. For example, the methylphenidate, the Ritalin, for example, the amipiatine with dictropipitine is most important medication given for people with ADHD. People with ADHD show less dopamine activity in key region of the brain, especially those associated with motivation and reward. Brain imaging study show that children with ADHD exhibit abnormality in their frontal lobes, an area in which dopamine is in abundance. Compared to children with ADHD, those ADHD appear to have smaller frontal lobe volume. The importance. Numerous studies, however, have shown significant relationship between exposure of nicotine in cigarette smoke during prenatal period of age. Maternal smoking during pregnancy is associated with development of more severe symptom of the disorder. The other one is the autism spectrum disorder. A seminal paper published in 1943 by psychiatrist Leo Canere described unusual neurodevelopmental condition he observed in a group of children. He called this condition early infantile autism, and it is characterized mainly by inability to form close emotional tie with others, speech and language abnormality, repetitive behavior, and intolerance of minor change in environment and the normal routine. Is basically most important characteristics of symptom of children with spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder, especially inability to close emotional tie with others, speech and language abnormality is most important. Autism spectrum disorder is probably the most misunderstood or puzzling of neurodevelopmental disorder. Children with the disorder show significant disturbance in three most important areas. One, deficit in social interaction, deficit in communication, repetitive pattern of behavior or interest. These disturbances appear in real life and cause serious impairment in function. Children with spectrum disorder, autism, may exhibit deficit in social interaction by not initiating conversation with other children and turning their head away when spoken to. These children do not make eye contact with others and they seem to prefer playing alone rather than with others. That's typical example, typical characteristic feature. Communication deficit can range from a complete lack of speech to one-word responses, say yes or no, when replying to questions or statements that require additional elaboration, to inshore speech and others. Difficulty maintaining conversation because an inability to reciprocate other comments. This deficit can also include problem in using and understanding nonverbal cues, facial expression, gesture, posture that facilitate normal communication. Repetitive pattern of behavior and interest can be exhibited in a number of ways. The child might engage in stereotyped, repetitive movements, and others. Importantly, autism spectrum disorder is not the same as intellectual disability. Also, these two conditions are often comorbid. DSM-5 specifies that symptoms of autism spectrum disorder are not caused or explained by intellectually disabled. The life problem from autism spectrum disorder is most important. Autism spectrum disorder is referred to in everyday language as autism. In fact, the disorder was termed autistic disorder in earlier edition of DSM, and it is diagnostic criteria were much narrower than those with autism spectrum disorder. The qualifier spectrum in autism spectrum disorder used to indicate that individual with the disorder can show range or spectrum, a symptom of that vary in their magnitude and severity, some severe, other less severe. That's most important things. And these aspects disorder were described having average or high intelligence and a strong vocabulary, but exhibiting impairment in social interaction and social communication, such as talking only about their special interests. DSM-5 does not include it, which is promoting concern among some parents that their children may no longer be eligible for special service. Some individuals with spectrum disorder, particularly those with better language and intellectual skill, can live and work independently as adults. However, most do not because of symptoms remain sufficient to cause serious impairment in many areas. In addition, mental health professionals are now more acknowledgeable about spectrum disorder and better equipped to make the diagnosis even in stable cause. Why is the prevalence rate HD increasing? Many people believe that the rate of ADHD have increased in recent years, and there is evidence to support this contention. For example, in recent years, the investigator found that parent-reported prevalence of ADHD among children 4 to 70 years old, United States, increased 22% during 4 years period, from 7.8% in 2003 to 9.5% in 2007. This indicates that the number or the prevalence of ADHD is alarmingly increased. Over time, this increase in parent-reported ADHD was observed in all socioeconomic groups, and was reflected in substantial increase in 12 states in America. Another investigation found that 1998 to 2000 through 2007 and 2009, the parent reported prevalence of ADHD increased among US children between age 5 to 70 years old. Also, the reason for underlying this apparent increase in the rate of ADHD over time are poorly understood and at best speculative. Several explanations are available. 1. ADHD may be overdiagnosed by doctors who are too quick to medicate children as a behavior treatment. Second, there is a greater awareness of ADHD now than in the past. Nearly everyone has heard about ADHD, and most parents and the teachers are aware of its key symptom. Thus, parents may be quick to take their children to doctor if they believe their children possess the symptom, and the teacher may be more likely than in the past to notice the symptom and refer child for evaluation. ADHD diagnosis criteria have changed over time. And what the possible cause for autism spectrum disorder? Early theories of autism placed blame squarely on shoulder of child parent, and in particular the mother. The exact cause of autism spectrum disorder remain unknown despite massive research efforts over the last 2 decades. Many different gene mutations have been implicated in autism. The second possible cause is the environmental factor. A number of environmental factors also thought to be associated with increased risk for autism spectrum disorder, at least in part because they contribute to new mutations. The important, this factor includes exposure to pollutants such as plant mucin in urban versus rural residents, and lack of vitamin D and deficiency is highly contributing. Child vaccination in relation to this finding were controversial and due a great deal of attention, sparkling in international forum on whether child should be vaccinated or not. This basically, indeed, a recent study compared the vaccination history of 256 children with autism spectrum disorder with that 752 controlled children across 3 periods during the first 2 years, birth to 3 months, birth to 7 months, birth to 2 years, and the like. You can see figure 1.20 on your manual. In terms of their exposure from fig 1.20, vaccination overall, there is no significant difference between children with spectrum disorder and those without disorder. The numerous volume or huge volume of electronic information pertaining to autism spectrum disorder, combining with how difficult it can be grasped complex scientific concept, can make separating good research from bad challenging. To conclude, vaccine cause of spectrum disorder on this basis, as many did, it's clearly incorrect for a number of reasons. Not at least for which because correlation does not imply causation, as you have learned. Additionally, as was the case with diet and ADHD in 1970s, for example, the notion that autism spectrum disorder caused vaccination in appealing to some because it provides simple explanation for this condition. Like all disorder, however, there are no simple explanation for autism spectrum disorder. In summary, neurodevelopmental disorder are a group of disorders that are typically diagnosed during childhood and characterized by developmental deficits in personal, social, academic, intellectual living. Thus, disorders include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism spectrum disorder. ADHD is characterized by pervasive pattern of inattention and all hyperactive and impulsive behaviors that interfere with normal functioning. And the genetic and the neurobiological factors contribute to the development of ADHD, which can persist well into adulthood and often associated with poor long-term outcome. Additionally, the major feature of autism spectrum disorder include deficits in social interaction, communication, repetitive movement, or interest. These are basically most important features. Characteristics of this autism spectrum disorder: deficit in social interaction, deficit in social relationship, deficit in having some relationship and socialization with people. And again, communication. communication, whether verbal communication, whether non-verbal communication, that's very important. This is Gelila International Seminary College for the course Psychological Disorder. Now we are discussing part 3. Therefore, we should focus and give attention for major feature of autism spectrum disorder that may deficits in social interaction and communications. When you say communication, with the verbal communication or non-verbal communication. Have difficulty in eye contact, have difficulty of communication with their peer or others. This helps understanding this cause, understanding the gaps and deficits by itself helps psychologists in shaping or in preparing some kinds of technique for intervention so that children can benefit from the intervention. Different psychological technique can be applied in order to support those children who have autism spectrum disorders. As with ADHD, genetic factor appear to play a prominent role in development of autism spectrum disorder. Genetic factor. Exposure to environmental pollutants such as mercury have also been linked to development of this disorder. Also, it is believed that autism is triggered by vaccination, MMR vaccination. Evidence does not support this claim. There are key, most important terms from this psychological disorder. For example, agoraphobia, anti-personality disorder. For example, lack of regard for person right, impulsivity, decisiveness, irresponsibility, lack of overt misdeed, anxiety disorder, attention, atypical autism spectrum disorder. And another key, most important terms in this psychological at the back of your module. That is helpful for you if you read it and try to conceptualize, try to understand the concept and try to relate and have some relation with that of whether the comorbidity, whether the cause, whether the symptom or the magnitude or whether the risk factor or the prevalence of the disorder. Therefore, it is must to read these key terms at the last of your chapter. For example, comorbidity, co-occurrence of two disorders in the same individuals. This means that for intervening something difficult without understanding this comorbidity. For example, anxiety disorder symptom characteristic may be reflected or comorbid with other disorder. Therefore, understanding this comorbidity is significantly important, especially for those practitioners, for those counselors, for those health professionals, in order to provide interventions. That intervention may bring significant change for those target groups. And the issue of delusion, the issue of hallucination is very important. That's basically under the schizophrenia. That's very important. And again, in general, to sum up the whole concept, DSM-5, especially the last version of 5, is most important manual in understanding this disorder. The cause, the risk factor, the etiology, the symptom, the characteristics, the risk factor, the prevalence of all disorder, or well illustrated, well described, well explained in this manual. APA is very fundamental. DSM-5, well revised, latest DSM-5 TR is very most important one. I would like to thank you for this psychological disorder class of this video. I thank you very much. Thank you.